Welcome to the first episode of Gators Gameday. I am one of your hosts, Seth Varnadore, joined by Bud Davis. This is it's not a game day yet, but this is a show Bud and I have talked about for a little bit. We will be, as the season goes, doing some live pregame, halftime show, and postgame shows with the stats and analytics everyone knows Bud for, and I'll be doing stuff on the film side. But we want to do some season preview stuff and kind of some of the big questions going into the season beforehand, let people get to know us a little bit better and see what kind of style we're going to have during the season. Bud, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit for people that may not know your kind of what you like to do and your connections in the Gator world there.
Yeah, so I'm a third generation Gator, longtime Gator fan. Always loved the Gators, watching football. Didn't play, but have always just been a nerd, and started getting into the message board culture around the time I graduated. And it was always, people would say something like it was truth, but a lot of times you wouldn't see the numbers behind it, and nobody was posting the numbers. And so I decided to start doing that, and I've been doing that for a few years now. And I think you and I really, have got along well, because I'll bring the numbers to one side and you'll bring the film. And, sometimes the numbers tell one thing, the film tells another. We've got to try and work through that. And then sometimes they tell a great story together. And I think that's some of our most compelling stuff. I love getting to hear your insight on what you see as a former football player in the film, and then trying to figure out, okay, do the numbers say that? Do they say something different? And if so, why? And I think we've had a lot of great conversations with that, and decided, hey, let's share them, especially on game day.
Yeah, and I just for those of you who may not know me, I got my master's from Florida, but grew up a huge Florida fan. Used to fall asleep as a young kid watching like VHSs of Florida football games from like 1993. So I've been watching Florida football for a long time. Grandfather went to Florida, dad went to Florida. Upset, kind of a third generation like you as well. But then I played and coached in high school and college a little bit. And last few years, I've been breaking down film on Florida and USF, but Florida for the last couple years, just kind of as a side thing to keep me connected to football as I've been out of coaching. So it's been really enjoyable, but I always enjoy kind of seeing I've always been interested in the number side of things. So when you started doing your stuff, it was really intriguing to me, and it made a lot of sense to me. And I like being able to, like you said, kind of marry up the film with what the numbers say, because you do kind of, you can kind of watch the film and delude yourself a little bit, just knowing kind of, okay, this is how things should work. But it's nice to have kind of firm numbers at the end of the day to be able to say, okay, well, this is kind of what's the actuality of it. So I think there's a little nuance and that's kind of what we're going to try to look for is, it's not just this or that, but they do kind of tell a good story together.
Yeah. And I think, the film, I think you usually have the questions first, and then, the numbers start bringing the answers and the resolution to a lot of those questions of, is it this or is it that? And we've worked through that a few times, so it'll be fun to try and do it live on game day this year.
Yeah, no,
that'll be a challenge.
It should be pretty cool. And I think it's going to be really unique for Florida fans. It's going to be something I don't think anybody else is doing or has done. We will have like live up to the minute stats during the game. At halftime, we're going to have kind of advanced stats up to the minute, and we'll have film from that game, and you can kind of look and see, okay, this is what is hurting Florida, and Bud can kind of lead. The numbers can kind of lead me to where to look, or if something's really sticking out, we can kind of see if, okay, well, maybe it's not as bad as it seems, or, things like that. So it should be a lot of fun. But we wanted to start with the big questions of the season. Now, one of the biggest questions, for some reason, even though it's been the best performing unit under Billy Napier, is the offense. It's always kind of a question under Billy Napier. There's been a lot of talk about his scheme, but we are in a chat with guy goes by the name of JP Gator on the Gators Breakdown Discord, but we've been talking with him. And before last season, he kind of posited to us that Florida may have a bit of a Frankenstein offense. And we kind of looked at the numbers last year, it bared it out a little bit. But then looking at it back again this year, it certainly seemed to show that there were some weird discrepancies and some interesting patterns. So we're going to talk more about that today. You put some information out about it, but just in general, what are your thoughts kind of on this offense that Billy Napier's had the last couple of seasons? Really?
I think it's good. Good, not great. There are some areas where it can improve, but I honestly think, like you said, it's by far the best unit of the two. The defense has been so bad. The offense has been consistent. It's kept us in games. Win-loss hasn't been great, but, scoreboard could be way worse if we didn't have the offense we did. I mean, we have a, by far above average offensive unit, mainly built on the passing game. And I think Mertz has a lot to do with that. You can look at numbers from 22 to 23, and they're really different. In 2022, we were looking at a lot of the stats, and this was an explosive passing offense without any efficiency. Yeah. Last year, we saw kind of the opposite. We saw efficiency only, no explosiveness. I think this is really a year where I have a lot of optimism for our offense. And if Florida does manage to get through this season with Billy Napier as his head coach, it's because the offense really took a big step forward. Defense did it. It's going to need to too, but I think the offense has to be the most impressive unit.
Yeah, and I think they've got a really good chance to do that. We're going to talk through a little bit of the base offense. We're going to look at some of the play calling numbers from last season. Then I'll show some film of kind of the favorite base concepts, and then we'll talk through the big split. There's a big split in terms of play calling from the backfield set that Florida uses. So when they're in the pistol, and this is stuff you put out last week, I believe, when they're in the pistol, heavy run tendency, and then when they're in the shotgun with the back offset, heavy pass tendency. So we're going to talk about that. Does just because it's somewhat predictable, does that mean it's bad? And we'll get through that. But let's start just kind of talking generally about the offense. So I'll throw up some, I believe you had some kind of where they just kind of a general look at them based on EPA last year, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is the opponent adjusted EPA per play that I put out each week. And this is where we finished at the end of 2023. And so if you hear us say EPA, that's expected points added. So, when you make a good play, you are more likely to score points. So you're saying your expected points go up. And, me and other nerds have just done the math to figure out how many expected points a play is worth. And this is on average on the x-axis. So that's the left to right axis on the bottom of the screen. That's how good our passing offense was. It was a little over 0.3 expected points per pass attempt. That's good. You can see we're right near Miami, Ole Miss, which had a very good passing offense, Texas, Florida State. We're not, a crazy offense like Jaden Daniels, LSU up in the top right. But we were definitely an above average P5 passing offense. We're to the right of this red dotted vertical line. Our rushing offense, lower EPA. Rushing is generally a lower EPA gambit. We'll talk about success rate. Rushing is more of a success rate, offense philosophy where you're not going to get as many expected points. You're not going for big chunk yardage plays, but it's pretty good in and out. And Florida was a very average rushing offense cut across the P5. We're on the dotted line. So neither of our offensive units were particularly good, but neither of them were bad. And we definitely, of the two, the passing offense was the better one. Neither were elite, but, this is pretty good for a first-year transfer QB. And really, we only had one wide receiver threat. We really didn't have many explosive. We didn't have an X-type receiver. We didn't have, a great offensive line. And I think, the staff did a good job of getting what they could out of this offense.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see where kind of they are, especially compared to a team like Florida State, who, the juxtaposition of perception of those two offenses last year, Florida State was seen as a high-powered, high-flying offense. but they were just pretty explosive, and that was able to kind of get those EPA numbers up. But you see Florida's kind of right there with a much tougher schedule. So that's kind of interesting, just perception. And this is why I love looking at the numbers, because perception is so different sometimes than what the actual reality of it is. But unfortunately, perception drives a lot of conversation on Twitter and amongst the fan base. So
that's why I like the numbers, and I like the opponent adjusted numbers. They ground it. They give us an idea of who's actually there because they're good, who's there because they're bad, who's there because they played tough teams. And no number tells the full story. I think we did have issues with explosiveness, but overall pretty good offense. So like with that in mind, I know you've got the film queued up. Why don't you kind of talk through like what is like our base offensive identity?
So I'm going to pull up first. Yeah, we've got a lot of film to watch, but I'm going to pull up first the play calling numbers overall from last year. And these are something you put together. Why don't you walk us through this, and then we'll take a look at Florida's base offensive concepts after this. But why don't you kind of walk us through this, because this is something you put together that's really awesome. And like, this is something just for people to understand. Like, these are things that coaches want to know, like self-scout, but this is also like almost what you get when you're scouting someone. You look at obviously run pass splits, personnel, how much personnel are they in? What kind of looks have they seen? What do they throw? Do they throw the ball really well against man? Are they better against zone? How often is the quarterback running the ball? Is it zone run or gap? Like all these things here. And let me get our pictures out of the way here. This is what you're like as a coach. This is super valuable. So this tells a really good story, I think, about it. Doesn't tell the whole story, but it tells a really good story about what these teams are like.
Yeah, and you'll see we're going to post charts like this and reference charts like this throughout the season when we talk about, when we're doing like self-scout looking at Florida, and then also when we're doing opponent previews. So let's walk through this chart. We've got an overview at the top where you can say it says all plays, pass attempts, designed runs, and sacks and scrambled. Next to that, there's a usage bar, and that says a percentage of plays. So Florida had 50% of its plays were pass attempts, 42% were designed run, 8% were either sacks or scrambles. So we had roughly a 60-40 split of pass attempts versus designed runs. You can see our pass attempts. So that's the usage. Then the next column is the relative usage, and that's going to be shown in green or purple. It'll be a green. So pass attempts are a green +1. Most teams had 49% of their plays be pass attempts. And then in purple for designed runs, most teams had 39% of their plays be designed run, or 45% of their plays be designed runs. So this is just relative to FBS, how Florida tends to do a concept. So you'll see things like motion has a big +32. So relative to the rest of FBS, we run a lot of motion. The next two columns are success rate, that's XR, SR, and then EPA per play. EPA per play, like we talked about previously, that's expected points added per play. And then success rate, that's just if the play generated positive EPA or negative EPA. So it takes out the big chunk numbers and really just looks like, on average, are you generating more expected points or less? And you can see our passing numbers, 51% success rate, 0.24 EPA per play. Those are good numbers. Those are going to be colored in green. So good numbers are green. Sacks and scrambles. Sacks hurt you a lot. We didn't have a particularly, Mertz wasn't great at scrambling for a lot of EPA. So we have a low success rate. 17% on our sacks and scrambles were successful plays. So 83% were failed plays. And we have a negative 1.1 EPA per play. So that means every time we took a sack or had a scramble, we lost a point on the scoreboard, essentially. So they were pretty costly. That's a really costly EPA per play, even for sacks and scrambles.
Yeah, those were exceptionally backbreaking. It felt like throughout the season. So much so that we, at one point, went and looked at, okay, whose fault are all these sacks? Because it was such an issue But it was just killing the offense about halfway through the year. They cleaned it up a little bit, but yeah, that was a big problem. So let's talk base offense. So you saw in there, I'll throw it up again real quick. In the run game, we'll start with the run game. Florida, 88% of the time is running zone blocking of some sort, which is 17 points higher in terms of relative usage. So heavy zone team for Florida. So their coaches have given some presentations in the past. So let's talk about zone first. So these are the running back aiming points in zone. So tight zone, you're aiming off the center's outside leg. Inside zone, the guard's outside leg, or even maybe the tackle's inside leg. Mid zone is outside the tackle. And outside zone or wide zone is kind of out on the tight end out there. So
yeah,
with that in mind, let's watch some film, and then we'll get into some of the passing game. So we'll start with some tight zone. So here's against Tennessee last year. Tennessee game was a great one to watch and go back and kind of compile some things. But you'll see how this hits downhill. You can see it a little bit better from the back here. So zone blocking, everyone should be moving. Everyone's kind of moving the same way. Then tight, he's hitting here. Well, that's his aiming point.
Just like the diagram.
Yep. So that's his aiming point. So we can see here, downhill. So that's tight zone, inside zone. A little bit wider, kind of off the guard here. And it can cut back. It's kind of, I'm not sure exactly how they teach it. Some of these look like they're, tight or inside zone, and the back will bounce it. I think it's kind of based on his vision. But you see here, he's tracking downhill here, kind of outside the guard. Cuts it back with the split flow action. That split flow action is also a big part of the offense. What do I mean by that? He's coming back across to kick out, and then you'll see him slip into the flat a lot as a pass receiver. Another look at inside zone here against Utah with a little window dressing, but the same idea. Hitting a little tighter. This is kind of inside zone, mid zone. He bounces it, makes a great cut. But the aiming point is here-ish. So another look. So they run a zone a bunch of different ways. Here's like a true mid zone where he's attacking more like the tackle's inside leg or the tackle. You can see a little bit better from the back. And then we got a clip of wide zone, I believe. So you can kind of see the real difference in it, the aiming points. So it looks a lot, it looks like they're running, and this is how it gets categorized a little bit. It's outside zone, it's outside zone. But they have a bunch of different ways to run it. This, I think, is the true outside zone. Really aiming outside the tight end. And then you can see it a little bit better from the back, how his aiming point is super wide. So, and this is mostly, you may have noticed a lot of these clips are out of the pistol. Some are in the gun, but a lot are out of the pistol. Wide zone again as well here. Outside the tight end. Put this one on here because Arliss Boardingham did a pretty good job against what some people are calling number one pick. So good for him here. It's Pierce there, I believe. He got a little help, but not bad. Not a bad job right there. So then we got a little counter. So against Tennessee, they did out of the gun. So this would be gap. So you saw on the play sheet gap plays. That's when somebody's down, people are pulling. You got a kick and then a wrap.
Yeah, it definitely not our bread and butter, but
no, and it has not been great, especially out of the gun. I believe we're going to get to some of the numbers in the split, but this play is probably one of the only ones they hit on a gap screen out of the gun. And then this is a counter out of the pistol. So that was, I thought, we'll get to kind of, there's definitely a split between play calling in the gun and pistol, but the concepts, I think, are not they're not too dissimilar in how often they run them. But this is kind of so after you run the ball a ton, this is why you run the ball so much out of the pistol. You get these easy boot throws that turn into big plays. And they run boot, a ton of different ways. But a lot of the boot stuff is trying to get into a flood concept. So it's pretty much they're flooding the side of the field when they roll out. And that's why you see some people, and we'll talk about in a future episode, Mertz throwing the ball you've heard some people say he only throws the ball to his right. This is a big reason why. They don't roll their quarterbacks opposite their throwing hand. That's something they've said from day one. They just don't do it. So if you watch Louisiana,
talked about it.
If you watch Louisiana, Levi Lewis is rolling left. Florida, they're rolling them right. Now, they do have some change-ups, which I'll show, but for the most part, they're rolling right, throwing right. Here's another look at boot with a corner, but this is basically the idea around a lot of their stuff on offense is floods. So a deep, an intermediate, and a short.
All flooding the same side of the field.
Yeah, flood an area of the field, and you've got high lows on defenders, right? Now, the way they get to those points, and this is the one thing about the offense that I think is the best part of it, is they get to the points in a bunch of different ways. He's going to end up in the corner where the go route would have got. It's the same spot. Pearsall is the intermediate. Here's the short. So it's just a flood, but instead of him running just a go, I'm going to tighten his split, make him run a corner. So that kind of gets him open there. The offense is not revolutionary. Here's just like this is just a classic flood here. Like, this is like the most basic. If you put on Madden or I'm sure the new college football game and just flood, this is what comes up basically. Right. And you're just trying to get high lows, but they get to it. What I like about the offense, they get to it a bunch of different ways. So here's flood again. And they're just bringing them from the other side. But it's the same general idea, and they'll tag a post on it. Here's again with the corner out from a tighter split. But again, the moving splits around, bringing guys from the opposite side. This is kind of more of a Y cross look, but it's the same idea. Again, you got a deep, a short, and if he didn't get knocked around, the intermediate. So that's kind of one of the main ideas in this offense is run concepts and then run them a bunch of different ways. But it's for the quarterback, it's all the same. So that's why I think when you're talking, how are they able? Because if you ask the fan base, Napier doesn't know how to throw the ball. He doesn't throw the ball, even though we just looked at the play calling sheet and it's, it was pretty close to 60-40. Yeah. But if you listen to the online discourse, he doesn't throw the ball. He doesn't know his schemes are bad. Yet he keeps recruiting high-level quarterbacks. How is that? Because I think they make it really easy for the quarterback. And so here's another way to run flood that involves smash. So that's another one of their favorite concepts. Smash, usually a hitch in a corner. Well, now they're going to bring him. So you got a deep, a middle or intermediate, and a short, right? So it's all for the quarterback. The reads are pretty easy. He can learn it. And here's just smash, just high-lowing, just from a condensed split. So it's a speed out and a corner. I think Mertz went the wrong way there. But here's another look at it, basically. And we'll see later that them running all these corner outs from the slot, showing that tendency and then changing on it later, proved to be pretty important. So here's smash with a pivot and a dig on the backside of it. So smash here, then you got the dig here behind it. So the passing game is concept based, so they can do two or three, flood can be three receivers and then they can do something else with the other two receivers. So dig pivot again. They really ripped up South Carolina. By the way.
And I mean, that was the game that people were talking about. Oh, he changed his route concepts for that game. And you and I were just like, what are you guys talking about? This is the same stuff. It just, the big difference was South Carolina played man.
They were not very
exclusively. And then they lost, those battles.
Here's mesh. This is an air raid favorite. So you've got a guy over the ball. You've got two crossers here. So you get one over the ball, two guys crossing underneath. So the back out, over the ball, crosser, and then you can run whatever you want down here. They ran a go. But mesh, that's an air raid staple. They run a lot of air raid stuff, surprisingly.
Mesh is one of our go-to. Like, if we talk about an efficient passing concept, we're going to be talking about like mesh, spacing. Those are some of their go-tos for the efficients, but for the most part, he loves the explosive pass concepts.
Yes, we've got some play action shot, but this is so they're actually going mesh with basically smash here, but you got mesh over the ball. Mertz gets it out of his hands fast, but if he holds it for a second, probably has a touchdown there. And then snag is another one they like a lot. But this is another, I call it snag, but it's basically air raid Y corner, where you've got a snag route here, a corner route, and then something to the flat. This is, again, another air raid staple. They like to run it with slants on the back side of it. Put this on here because you see they like to get to it a bunch of different ways. So this is basically, so right here, there's your flat guy. Here's your corner guy. Well, where's the snag guy? He's coming from opposite side of the formation. But we're getting to the same spots. The read is the same for the quarterback. It's just I show it a different way to the defense. So that, to me, is the best part of the offense. And again, it's just a bunch of – and then spacing is something they ran a little bit this year as well, where you're just trying to kind of widen. So you got – hitch there. He's running them off, and then he's running to the flat. This is a 4-man spacing. They do it with 3-man as well. This is kind of just some of the base throws they like. And they'll attach a slant backside, so if you overload it, throw to the single receiver side. And this is stuff that they've liked pretty much since they've started. They've been pretty consistent in terms of the concepts they've called, which is, I think we'll get a chance to talk about. Is that due to having first-year quarterbacks and new receivers kind of both years, or is that something, different? So those are kind of the base, and I didn't even include kind of the, the other part is the big shot plays down the field, but they like to, double post, but they kind of will take shots off the play action stuff, especially out of the pistol. So, looking at those at the base, now we can kind of talk about something that you put out, which was the kind of the difference in play calling between pistol and in the gun. And if you were paying attention, you probably saw it in those films. Not a ton of drop back out of the pistol on all those passing concepts we looked at. Not a ton of run out of the gun there. I tried to put in a couple examples, but there wasn't too many. So you want to look at the pistol first here?
Yeah, let's talk about the pistol first.
Okay. So here's the pistol numbers.
Yeah,
so first down last year for Florida.
Yeah, and it's good to look at first down here is because, first down is really a neutral situation. You can do what you want. You should have the playbook to do what you want in this situation. So the pistol refers to a running back alignment. So the running back is behind the quarterback when he's out of the shotgun. So that's the pistol. So on first down out of the pistol, we have a 65% run rate, which is really high. You'd like to see that probably be a little bit closer to 60-40, but, overall 65, pretty bad tell there, but you can tell, overall all plays, that success rate in EPA, they're still positive, still pretty good. The passing numbers, 62% success rate passing there. And then designed runs, 43% success rate, not great. EPA is still in the positive, which is fine. That's generally what we want to see. But really kind of some of the worry is, is this a tell? And some of the things that might be saying yes is you look at these heavy boxes.
Yeah.
63% heavy box on first down is pretty absurd. You can see it's 26% higher than you would expect, FBS average. Some of that is we tend to go heavier personnel, 12 personnel. So that's 1 running back, 2 tight ends. So that's probably driving some of it. But you can see even, we're getting the heavy box more than the 12 personnel. So, it's something worth watching. But of the two, the pistol was really the more effective of the two offenses. So this idea is kind of that, Napier has a Frankenstein offense that's really 2 parts. And this is the idea you alluded to at the start, Seth. And the first is that we have this pistol run game that really looks like some of the wide zone stuff you see at the NFL, where you've got the wide zone run game, and then it sets up a lot of that boot passing game. And, we can see the pistol passing game, the concepts like the flood off the boot actions and the wide zone that we looked at in the Gators clips above that Seth showed, that looks like a lot of like the 49ers style offenses that you see in the NFL. But kind of some of the problem is we don't have a lot of the efficient passing concepts out of the pistol. We have a lot of this counter punch play action pass with the boot action where we throw to the right, and we get really good results on this pistol passing game. But this isn't, 3rd and long. You can't go into the pistol and counter punch. Teams know you're not running there. So you can't bait them with the play action like you might be able to on first down and get the same results. And so instead, Napier has this other half of this playbook, which looks more like a spread style playbook. And so we'll call this the spread style. But really one of the keys that we're in this other side of the playbook is the running back is no longer going to be in the pistol. He's going to be offset. So that means we're still in the shotgun, but he's going to be offset. So he's going to be to the side of the quarterback. And when you can see when we do this, now we're passing 70% of the time and only running 30% of the time. So this is really a side of the playbook when we had Mertz, especially, that it became where the running back lined up became a tell where, roughly 2/3 of the time you could get run or pass just based on the running back alignment. And then situationally, it gets a lot harder too. You can see our passing numbers are significantly worse out of the offset. Our running numbers are actually pretty good. That's a little bit because defenses are probably aware of this tell, this pass tendency here. But the sack numbers are really bad. Teams kind of were able to pin their ears back here, know the pass is coming, and get a good pass rush. So this is some concerning numbers. You can see when the offset, it's usually when we're in lighter personnel. Our play action rates are going down. We're no longer seeing the heavy boxes. Now teams are going much lighter boxes against us. We're getting a lot of 6-man boxes. Teams, they're really not biting on the play action. You can see the EPA and the play action is in the negative, which is pretty surprising. It's purple across the board in the passing game, which is really not what you want to see for something that's 70% of your pass attempts.
No, it's interesting looking at this, and then obviously a lot of it's personnel driven. That, not just basically not being in 12 personnel in the shotgun at all is kind of interesting because you look at some of the 12 personnel numbers, and you could run. That's the odd thing to me is you could run a lot of the same stuff, and I have some examples of them running boot stuff out of the gun.
Yeah,
there's examples of them running like there's chains, and we're going to show some change ups because I think there is a school of thought that if it's predictable, it's bad. Not always, but
no.
We'll talk about that in a second. But it's in the pistol, those easy throws of the tight ends. You look at the tight end targets in the pistol, 27%, which is plus 17 relative usage, and then the success rate is 75%, and the EPA per play is 0.78. Then you look in the shotgun. The tight end's target goes down to 6%, and the success rate is 0.
Yeah.
and EPA per play is negative. So that's kind of an odd. Yeah, that's kind of an odd because, I thought as the year went on, those two tight ends, Hansen and Boardingham, really helped the offense a lot. But you take them off the field, and that would be interesting to see how they do the personnel this year, because we're going to talk about some of the things that I think will help them improve a lot is personnel at receiver. So that'll help some of these numbers as well. But
yeah, and kind of one of our theories to explain this is Mertz is kind of an anomaly as a QB from what Napier's coached, right? He's not Levi Lewis, he's not Anthony Richardson. So a lot of the spread stuff before teams, had to consider the QB a runner. They don't with Mertz, right? I don't know if you have any clips of any, there are times when we'll run what looks like Mertz running his own read, but nobody's, buying Mertz as a runner.
We've got some of that in terms of, what can help improve this. I've got some clips kind of to look at that. But you look at last year's offset numbers, you sent those, and Florida was 60-40 offset. They used the tight end a little bit more last year. I don't know if that was more or in 2022. I don't know if that was personnel driven at receiver or not, but quarterback designed run was a big helper. And
the quarterback designed run last year, it crushed, and then the sacks and scrambles with Richardson were positive. It's insane.
So go from negative, right? You can see up here the EPA per play and sacks and scrambles negative 1.2. Last year with Anthony Richardson, it was positive 0.15. So that's quite a drop on a per play basis.
A sack and a scramble with Anthony Richardson was worth more than a designed run or a pass attempt with Graham Mertz for the same set of the playbook.
So I guess my question would be, looking at these, is the predictability necessarily, is it hindering Florida at this point? I think maybe in the shotgun, but the pistol where it's run heavy, it seems like they're kind of getting what they want in that look.
Oh yeah. And I think that's I'm on the same page. Out of the pistol, you're getting exactly what you want, which is you want the teams are scouting this. Like, you start charting the Florida games, this stuff pops out. And so, I mean, we're not coming out of this with stuff that the Gators don't know or their opponents don't know. This is showing up. And opponents are thinking run when they're seeing the heavy formation in the pistol. And that is what the Gators want them to do, because it sets up the deep explosive passing. That's the flood passing game. That's Mertz rolling to the right, hitting them deep in the corner or on the go at that third level. It's setting all of that up. And you're still getting really good numbers running the ball out of the pistol, even though they know it's coming. We've filtered these by down and distance, and the short yardage pistol run game absolutely crushed. So to me, the predictability wasn't hurting us out of the pistol because we had the guys to execute it. Mertz was way more comfortable with that side of the playbook, and the results show it. I mean, the numbers bear it out. The pistol ripped for us, and we threw well out of it, and we ran well out of it in short yardage situations. And, on average, it was a great set for us, going heavy and out of the pistol.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw this up. You sent this to me, just in terms of the run concepts out of both.
Yeah,
you see, it's not like they're not running certain things in terms of like percentage wise. They're not running. Oh, well, they get the gun. They don't run this. It's about the same amount. It's just look at the inside zone. It's in the pistol. It's positive EPA per play, better than outside zone. And in the gun, it's just terrible. So, what's the discrepancy? It's just, so what's the issue there? I think some of that, and we'll talk about, can be helped by what kind of quarterback you have or other things you can do around it to kind of protect it a little bit. But predictability to me is not a nightmare. Like when I think predictability and being successful, think about the really good triple option teams.
Yeah.
They're probably going to run the ball a lot. But when they break tendency, they get huge explosive plays. So when they capitalize on those, like the Georgia Tech teams that were really good and had like one really good guy at receiver, when they pulled that ball out and that guy was one-on-one and your safeties are crept up, well, now it's a touchdown, right? So predictability is not the worst thing. And I've got some examples on film here of like when you kind of present something and then change it up, that's kind of part of the cat and mouse game in football. So we've got some change ups that Florida's been running. So here against, the simplest change up is just run a double move, right? We showed you one thing all night. Now, instead of running the out, Pearsall's out and up. Also, up front, you give out of the gun some play action and you pull a guard. That gets a little bit more bite from the safeties when you pull a guard, right? Play action with the guards pulling is helpful. Here, we talked about Florida running smash all the time. Well, so this guy's running a corner a lot. Now, bang, double move.
How's that of the pistol? They ate that play action up.
Yeah. So these are the shots you like to take over the top there. Double move, just in the seam, working here, coming back to it. And then a little change up in play action here. So the pistol, you're thinking, okay, they always roll to the right and throw to the right. There are a few times where Florida will have it and they'll bring it back left. So right, if he's able to, I don't know why he flushes here. If he just sits and delivers that right there, you've got a great play. Now he ends up making a good play out of it, but you see that it's a changeup. You're thinking one thing, and you come back with something different. Again, pistol, play action, rolling out. Not a ton of, rolling out, run some crossers. Now you drop off a screen for a good play. So you can have some bit of predictability. And this is a really good example against Utah where we're going to be in the pistol and we're actually going to throw a screen back and left when everybody's thinking everything's going to the right. So you've got to protect yourself. Another screen change up. And this is something I thought coming into last season, I thought screen should be a lot more important. They hit it a couple times. They just weren't great at it, which and so here's another little change up. So gun, we're only running, we run a lot of zone. Well, here they're going to run a wham. So they're going to leave this guy unblocked to get kicked by the tight end after they run a bunch of, split zone. And that just kind of leaves it wide open. So, and then we talked, right? We watched the South Carolina. How many times did they run smash? And it was covered like crazy. Well, now I got a little bit room to the corner. Now I can break it to the post. And they've showed this a few times. This is one they missed that could have made the game a little bit tight here. Show smash, and then you saw this in the spring game as well. Show smash, break it to the post. I liked it there. This is something that I like. This is a big time red zone play for them. They broke this out to the open field here for the spring game. I think you're seeing them add a little bit more. And then, always you have these kind of reverses and things like that, which you ran the numbers. The trick plays weren't quite as bad as it felt like they were.
The trick plays actually did really well. The misdirections, we got huge value off them. I think a lot of it is Trey Wilson. And people credit him instead of Napier, which is fine. But, it's one of those reasons why it's nice to have the numbers. And it's one of those things I think you and I have talked about before when people do get upset about why are we doing X, why are we doing Y, like this X, Y, Z, go chart a game, chart it, like start writing down what you're seeing, what we're doing. And you're going to start to pick up, like we do break tendencies. And we do set things up. There are a lot of concepts in our offense, even if there are things that are predictable, like the running back alignment being a run versus pass tell. That's not the end all be all of what makes a play successful.
Yeah. And I had a coach tell me one time, you make tendencies to break tendencies. Like sometimes it'll be, I have a guy I work with that, like, we're going to do one thing for the first 4 games of the year because we're playing somebody really good the 5th game of the year. And we want to be able to change it all and make them really think about it on the day of the game. So that kind of thing happens, but it is odd to see the offenses be totally different. I think there is some in terms of the pass splits. I think there is some explanation in terms of how they do stuff. They will package plays, so there will be throws that are easy throws along with a run game call. And if the quarterback decides I'm going to take the throw, well, then the passing numbers go up, even though they have called a run play there. So there's some of that, but I don't think probably not statistically significant. There's also these type of plays that, these are passes, but are they really passes? Like these are.
Oh yeah.
These are runs, but
yeah,
these are runs, but you get passing yards for them, which is great for the quarterback.
As passes.
So, and then but it's weird. These are the only two, and I didn't look at every game, but when I was just looking, okay, I just want some pistol drop backs, like straight drop back out of the pistol, no play action fake. I found 3, I think. This one, another one against Utah where you need to throw the ball kind of later in the game, which misses this one.
Yeah.
That going back and watch the Utah game, if Mertz was a little bit sharper, they have a good chance in that game. So,
and we've talked about this too. Napier did his coaches talk on how he prepares quarterbacks. And one of the key things every week is he talks to his quarterback, what plays did you like this week? And they take those and they build those into the game plan. And so a lot of this was Mertz's first year in this system. He didn't run anything like the spread side of the playbook at Wisconsin. So hopefully in year 2, we're going to see a lot more comfort in those play packages and see that side of the playbook perform a lot better with Mertz and get a lot more reps and a lot better results. It's not just a predictability thing. I think it's a QB comfort thing as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's not only that, but you're kind of working in a bunch of new receivers as well, or guys besides Pearsall. The guys that had this, you lost Shorter and Henderson, both left. So you're breaking in new starters at receiver. Your probably best group of receivers were freshmen, really young guys outside of Pearsall. So you got to bring those guys along slowly. And we saw Wilson kind of get more and more and more as the year went on. And, there was a lot of, well, why is he not on the field at all times? He's one of your best players. It's like, well, he's got to learn a position. So, and the position he's got to learn is not the one Ricky Pearsall is running, because Ricky Pearsall ended up being a first-round draft pick. So, there's things like that you have to take into consideration as well. So, I want to kind of look forward here towards the end. Like, do you think a lot of it is, is some of that we'll see this get as the package for the quarterback gets a little more expansive? Will we see some of this predictability shrink a little bit, you think, especially out of the pistol, where there's really just not a drop back game to be even some of the throws that went back and looked last year, some of Richardson's dropbacks out of the pistol, it was really just, this is actually a run call and I have an RPO, I can throw the go route if they play man. So it's a throw, but it was really a run call still. So
it's the predictability is something I'm watching this year. Like, I don't want it to be 70-30. I want to see much more closer to 60-40, but in the grand scheme of things, the most important thing is I want to see an effective offense. And I've got big hopes for that. I did not like our receiving core last year outside of Pearsall. I think this year, DK, Badger, and Wilson, now you've got 3 true good wide receiver weapons that are clear big upgrade. If Jackson is out there getting 200 snaps, something is wrong. And I think we've upgraded the wide receiver room. I think we've upgraded the offensive line. We did good with our run blocking last year, but the sack numbers were brutal, and that has to get fixed. Hopefully we brought in some tackles who can help with that. I think you and I did a project where we broke out the sacks last year and tried to assign blame, and it ended up being a mix of, some of it was on the O-line, some of it was just bad luck, some of it was on Mertz. Some of us on the backs.
Yeah. So
we got rid of one of the backs who was a big part.
Well, got rid of.
I don't know if we got rid of. He's no longer.
Yeah, somebody got rid of somebody. But I don't know if it was.
So I mean, the hope is the sack numbers improve.
Yeah, and I think, like, to me, what I hope to see more is more RPO, and I'll show some examples of that here in a second. More drop back out of the pistol. Just there's no reason you can't run the stuff you run out of the pistol. Now, in my mind, all right, as somebody's coached quarterbacks, all right, what changes? All right, well, your drops change if you're in the pistol. Mm-hmm. So if I'm in the pistol and not in the shotgun, so pistols usually like 3-4 yard, shotguns at 5-6. So if I'm in the pistol now, if it's a throw that's normally a 3-step drop out of under center, so gun, catch, and fire, my footwork may be a little bit different out of the pistol. If it's a 5-step drop, which out of the gun's usually a 3-step drop, well, now it may be a little different. So you got to factor in practice time and things like that as well. Like, you can't put in everything. And so it's almost been like back-to-back year ones for the offense because you change quarterbacks, you change a lot of personnel. So that is one thing that gives me a little hope in terms of some of this being a little bit more cohesive. But, I think there are a couple of things they can do. Quarterback run, and this is where we kind of get to the lag way of it all. I've got some. I think they obviously, you look back at the 2022 numbers, quarterback run was a big help. And so that can kind of help a little bit, especially in the gun. That's where I think you miss it the most. So here's against Missouri. So this is a play. This was with Mertz. He's to the flat. I'm reading him, and we got our run here. If I pull it, now this guy's got to make a decision. So say he goes inside, I pull it. He's going to make a decision. Am I going to widen to the flat? Well, then if he does, I'm one-on-one with a safety. Or if he plays me, I can throw it out to the flat, right? With Mertz, I mean, this guy kind of slow plays it, but he's squeezing down pretty hard, right? Ends up making the play. Here's later in the game. Not the same exact concept, but you can see, and this is with Max Brown in the game. You got a wide edge. With Mertz, he's probably squeezing this pretty hard. And he's not really afraid of having to redirect. Now, they bring the tight end across. They can kind of bluff here, and you can see it really well from the back. Just having the threat of the quarterback run greases the run game in the shotgun a little bit, right? Because now I'm here, and then I bluff, but he's not squeezing as hard because he knows this guy can pull it. He's a little slow, same reason. And now the back's able to get vertical in that seam. And then here's the same exact concept that they ran earlier with the tight end, I believe, on the arrow. He takes the arrow. Now I'm reading him. Where's he going? He squeezes. Well, now I can pull it and run. And so there's where I think it's really helpful. You saw Mertz pull it like one time, and this is the only time. And I think he actually made the wrong decision here. I think he should have this guy's not playing it super fast. If he gives that, I think it might not be a bad play. But pulls it and just makes you have to defend it. I think that stuff helps so much. And this is where I think Lagway could be interesting. This is easy for him. You put Lagway in the gun. They're running screen here. I think they're running screen up top. If you like the numbers, so Mertz right here likes the numbers, whip it out there. But also, like, if you're DJ Lagway and this guy starts to widen out here, well, now I've got, some pretty good numbers here to just run quarterback tight zone or quarterback zone. So those are the kind of things that can help grease those, I think, shotgun numbers. And this is just an example of why is the boot so effective, and why is the pistol so much more effective, I think, just overall. So this is a run play, but watch the hold you get because of how much boot Florida runs. So you'll see this end back here. And this is what you're not getting in the gun, I think. And that's why the numbers are a little bit different. So, right, this guy's seen enough boot. Earlier in the game, he kind of squeezes down and almost sacks Mertz when he comes out. So he's really waiting for the boot. Here as well, they're kind of slow playing it. They've gotten the motion to kind of hold him and get him out of there. So now he's kind of caught in no man's land. He's caught in no man's land, and now you get that. So as a coach up in the box, this guy's obviously not been squeezing all game. He's been trying to play the boot. All right, well, then we should be able to run the ball away from him. And they pop one right here. You're not getting that in the shotgun. Nobody cares. So what do you have to do? Right? You have to RPO a little bit. This one's out of the pistol, but same idea, right? I'm running counter. This is another one where I think if he gives it, they're in decent shape. But I'm running counters. But if they don't match numbers, I'm just going to throw it out here. And now I got a guy in space. So more of this. They do a little bit. I think this is the guy I think does it. First of all, when Billy got hired, I thought his offense reminded me of, it wasn't as explosive, and Sark is more RPO heavy than Billy was. But they reminded me a little bit about, with all the shifts and motions in Sark's last year at Alabama. But Sark is a lot more RPO heavy. So here's it doesn't have to be a basic RPO. So he's going to kind of here and then wheel. And this could be 12 personnel. This could be Boardingham. This could be Hansen here. He's just a little more creative. Now he throws it there, but he could have easily just dropped it here. And they're running a run play here. So there's some creativity in the RPO stuff. Here's another one where this one's a super easy one. It's just a pop with a tight end. Again, out of the gun. So if this guy gets nosy, Sark's saying here, this is from a clinic, if this guy lines up over the tight end, we're running the ball no matter what. If he's tight, now we can read him. So as he squeezes in there, they do the bubble here to widen this guy. You just got to pop pass to the tight end. These are the kind of things, and he even says it in the clinic. When you don't have a quarterback that can run, these are the things you have to do to control people in the run game. And here's another example of it.
So I think your 2 points are, we can, in the offset shotgun, the spread style half of the playbook, we're going to get some reps each game from Lagway, and that's going to have a lot bigger threat. But even Mertz out of the pistol, we can be in our heavy personnel and run a lot more RPOs and kind of get some efficient passing out of there and not just solely be based on that play action boot.
And here's one. Yeah, and here's one from last year. They run a little bit, but here's one just from last year I saw. Not a great throw, but you see as he squeezes in here, I'm just going to run a dig right in that hole. A better throw here for Mertz, and you got a nice play on just an easy first down off an RPO look. So,
and the easy way for people to tell if it's an RPO or a pass, is what's the offensive line doing. Yeah. If they're run blocking, if they're getting downhill when we're throwing the ball, that's an RPO. Yeah. They're blocking a run. And, I mean, that's part of what makes it hard to defend is to the front seven, to the linebackers, to the safeties, they're seeing cues that are telling them this is a run play at the same time you're throwing. And, we see Texas have a lot of success with it with a pretty similar looking playbook.
And they'll do it out of the pistol. I think I showed the example of the gun, but they'll do it out of the pistol. They have a lot of really good RPO stuff that's easy throws for the quarterback, but they want to run the ball a lot too. They also are able to kind of be a little bit more efficient in those shots down the field, or at least they were last year, and RPO stuff to kind of get guys wide open. So I think a little more creativity there.
Much better O-line and a much better wide receiver core than we did, and it makes a difference. And, I think us upgrading at those spots can make a big difference. Do you have the wide receiver return production numbers?
So that was kind of the last thing I want to talk about, which I think can help. Obviously, I think we all saw, especially looking at the offensive line, the sack and scramble numbers, that can be greatly increased here.
There's a graph I put out earlier when we got the commit from Badger. And it was looking at, over the past few years, how much yards have you gotten back from your receivers? So wide receivers and tight ends, that's on the x-axis. How many yards are returning from the previous year? And then on the y-axis is a measure of the quality of those yards. So you can see years like 2021, we didn't even return 1,500 yards. And most of those yards, basically those yards, every route the receiver ran, they only got about 1.5 yards. And a good wide receiver.
Look at last year.
Yeah, 23, terrible. And that's pretty much all Pearsall. So 21, 22, 23, 24 before we got Badger was also shaping up to be bad. Now we're to the Badger number on the right, where 2024 with Badger, we're at 2,500 yards returning. We're at like 1.6, 1.7 yards per route, which isn't great. You want that to be a little bit higher. Some of that is weighed down by a couple guys who are really not good receivers who got a lot of snaps last year. But then, Badger and DK, both of them had much better 2022s than 23s. And if we use their 22 and 23 numbers, or if we use their 22 numbers instead of 23, we're up there on the far right, where we're returning about 3,000 yards from our receivers. And we're at about 2 yards per route, which is you're starting to approach very good territory and close to the 2019, 2020 seasons where, we had guys who went and played in the NFL. That's, you've got your kids, Tony's. Yeah, you've got a ton of receiver Grimes,
I think Swain was 2019 as well.
Yeah, Swain.
Yeah, you had a lot of dudes that year. Yeah. So if you start
Van Jefferson, those were stacked rosters, and we're the most comparable we've been since those rosters. I don't think we're quite as elite. I think Wilson's probably the most elite guy, but DK and Badger, they can put up those numbers, and having 3 true weapons it's huge for what you can do with an offense. We'll probably talk a little bit later about Mertz throwing deep, and throwing right. But
I do have some film. I do have some film of the receivers to kind of end it here, which I think can be a big helpful. We'll start with just a little Wilson, but it's just if Mertz just simply, if it comes to, you come to find out Mertz just isn't a deep ball thrower, okay. And then you need some yak guys. So here's Wilson. He's a pretty good yak guy. Yeah, and so here's some DK. I tried to find some clips of him kind of running. They used him as a reverse guy. This is kind of probably his best game. This was Mertz's best game before he transferred to Florida. That was his last year at Wisconsin. DK, and this is a couple years prior. So he's played for 3 or 4 years at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Just had a really good 22. But he's made some highlights. This is against Arizona State in the bowl game, getting himself open against man coverage. He's got some skills. This against Michigan 2 years ago, I believe. So pretty good Michigan team. I think this is 2020 Michigan. But he's a guy that they use as a gadget player. Got him reverses, things like that. But he's also made some plays down the field. Here you can see a little run after the catch. He's not as dynamic as like a Trey Wilson, or I don't think as Badger, but he can be reliable. In the practice I saw, it seemed like every 3rd or 4th down, he was in the slot. Mertz was finding him for first downs. So I think he's going to be really important. Badger is an interesting one.
I'm excited.
We've got a mix of 2022 and 2023 looks here, but like powerful dude. I just put this one up because he looked powerful, but he's not a slug. He can move a little bit. Here they call him out, like his toe was out of bounds here, but he's interesting because if you play him at X, he can win one-on-one. He played in the slot, but they also did stuff like this. And so if Mertz has to be, if he needs to be more that intermediate, high percentage thrower, I think you're a lot better suited for that. I don't know if that's the case, but I mean, you can see these guys when you get guys that are starters at other Power Fives, I think, and like pretty good players, it's only going to help. This is a nice catch. So these were all 22s. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think having a guy like Badger, he's going to command attention from the safeties, right? He is not the type of guy you want to see a corner isolated against. And Trey Wilson's the same. He's going to be commanding attention from the entire defense. And then having a third guy in DK that, they've only got so many dudes who can go around on the other side of the ball. We're going to play good teams, but at the end of the day, there's only so many DBs out there and only so much safety help you can get. And having a third guy out there is really what puts it over the top for me. But, Badger, nobody made opponents. He led the FBS in broken and missed tackles last year. I think he led the Pac-12 in kickoff return yards. He is an elusive dude. Having him back there returning kicks with Wilson, all of a sudden special teams gets way more explosive, way more optimistic. And it takes the load off Trey Wilson in a way where we can actually, teams aren't going to be able to fully focus on him and take him away without opening up gaps elsewhere. And so I think it's going to make a better season for Wilson. It's going to make a better season for this offense, better season for Mertz.
Yeah, so I'd heard about Badger's run after the catch stuff because I think I'd seen some of your stuff about how many missed tackles he forced and that he was kind of a yak machine. But some of these throws where he's using his body are, and posting guys up, that's what you want as your X. Like if a guy can run, that's great, but a big body that can kind of post people up and win jump balls and things like that is also really helpful. So yeah, he's exciting. If he's fully healthy, I know he had a back thing, but if he's fully healthy, you're so much better. And then if one of your young guys, because you did have, you had a really good freshman class of receivers, like in terms of recruiting rankings and everything. That was a real highly thought of group. So if one of those guys pops, you go from, we saw the 2023 numbers last year where it's just the pits of despair, and you're somehow able to get 3,000 yards passing out of that group to a really good group that you could, I think, win some games with.
You kind of mentioned it in passing, but you didn't show many clips of it. But we ran a lot of slants last year, and those are you need dudes to win slants. And outside of Pearsall, we just didn't have many dudes who could do it. And I think this year now we've got guys who they can run the slants and then they can get the yak after it. And it's just going to make, I think, that spread offense side where we struggled so much, open up a lot more.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, if you can force people to play you man, like South Carolina played a lot of man, well, they torched South Carolina. Better teams that played man gave them some problems. But if all of a sudden you're adding, like if Badger is what he was in 22, where, you're watching games and people say he's one of the best receivers in the Pac-12, you're just adding that guy, I think if you look at his profile compared to Pearsall's when Pearsall came over to Florida, I'm pretty sure Badger's is much better.
Yeah.
In terms of yardage and things like that. So it's, if you get that guy, then all of a sudden you've got some dudes that can play. I think obviously offensive line performing better will be really helpful, but I think they kind of were able to scheme around a bad offensive line last year. So they've got some experience.
Yeah. It stinks to lose the explosiveness in ETN.
Yes.
I think that's probably if we had ETN, I'd be telling so many lies about this offense. I like Montrell. And
watching more, especially from like the end zone copies, makes you appreciate Montrell a little bit more. But he does not have that. He doesn't have that gear. Yeah,
and it's not just that right through. That next level that ETN could get, where he took what should have been a 3 or 4 or 5 yard run and out to 12-15.
Yeah, I was trying to watch like, this guy. He's just he's what, and then you around, you're like, okay, he's pretty good. Try to watch as a scorned lover. Almost.
You got to go back to the all 22 of all the sacks.
That'll sober me. That'll sober you up a little bit. Yeah. So
I like Ball.
Yeah,
who went off in the spring game?
Yeah, he's a big dude, and he's allegedly squatting. In one of the swamp videos, which are really, really good stuff, really good behind the scenes stuff, they have like boards of all the records. I'm pretty sure he has a squat record for the running back group, and it's like 510 pounds. So he's going to be interesting. I wouldn't be shocked to see him play. But so that's kind of it for this first episode of Gators Game Day. This will be, I'd imagine, unless Florida is undefeated and beats Georgia this year. That one may go longer than this, the post game of beating Georgia. But other than that, this will probably be the longest episode we do. But we wanted to lay a foundation here, introduce ourselves, and also some of the concepts and things like that we'll be talking about and referencing as we go on throughout. We'll be back with more questions as we lead up to the season. You mentioned one, Mert's deep passing. What was the issue? We'll talk a little bit about the defense. There's all kinds of things that we can get into before the season starts. Bud, any final thoughts here on the first episode of Gators Game Day? Oh, you can follow us on Twitter at Gators Game Day. Like and subscribe, do all that stuff. Share this with people if you enjoyed it. Yep.
And no, I'm excited. I think the defensive one's going to be definitely the least fun video we do of the year. At least preview video. But yeah, we'll do we're going to be talking similar numbers. We'll do opponent previews. So we'll have the same charts that we showed for the Gators. We'll have those broken out for opponents. Try and give you some ideas of what to watch for in the game, what we're watching. So yeah, keep your eye out for that. What the running back is doing, pre-snap and kind of see if that's a tell in this first game. That's something I'm going to be watching.
Yeah. So thank you guys for watching. We'll be back with another season preview here in the coming weeks. But thank you guys for watching Gators Game Day, episode 1. Go Gators.
Go Gators.